Hello everyone, welcome to another video. Today we are going to continue with Asian mythology, and this time around we are going to read about Chinese and Japanese mythologies. So let's start. Yang became the heavens, Yin became the earth, Bangu and the creation of the world. According to the most commonly accepted Taoist Chinese creation story, before the creation of the universe, there was only formless chaos. Eventually, a cosmic egg emerged from the chaos and coalesced over the course of 18,000 years. Inside the egg was the first living entity, Bangu, a semi-divine human who, according to Zhang account of his myth, took the form of a horned, furry giant. Other descriptions of Bangu portrayed him with the head of a cat, the trunk of a serpent, and the paws of a tiger. His name, Bangu, literally translated to coiled antiquity in Chinese, because prior to his hatching from the egg, his body had been twisted around to fit inside its confines. Rising heavens. Bangu could not stand to be constrained inside the egg, so he smashed his way out. The whites became heavens, and the yolk the earth, while the larger pieces of the shell became the sun and the moon, and the smaller pieces the stars. In one version of the myth, after Bangu hatched, he split dark yin from light yang, the oppositional principles of nature which were born from chaos. Over the next 18,000 years, Bangu transformed 9 times each day. Every day, the ethereal yang rose 3 meters or 10 feet higher, forming heavens, while the heavy yin sank 3 meters, 10 feet deep, and became the earth. Bangu, who stood between the two to keep them apart, grew 3 meters, 10 feet taller each day, becoming a giant. He grew to be 45,000 kilometers or 28,000 miles tall. That was the distance between yin and yang. Bangu has more divine than heaven and more sacred than the earth, but some accounts suggest that he had divine assistance in his creation of the universe. He was aided by cosmic beings, a unicorn, a tortoise, a phoenix, and a dragon, shaping the earth. Once the heavens and the earth had formed, Bangu began to die. His body divided up to create the most important features of the universe. His breath became the wind and the clouds, and his voice the thunder. His right eye became the moon, and his left the sun. His hair became the stars, while his sweat and bodily fluids became the rain. Bangu's blood and other bodily fluids gave rays to the seas and the rivers, while his muscles and veins acted as tunnels in the earth. His teeth and bones became metal and rocks, and his bone marrow pearls and jade. Bangu's body hair became the plants and the trees. Some accounts say that the small fleas that lived on his body became people after being touched by the wind. Others suggest that Bangu formed the human race from clay. This is not the first mention that we have that people were formed from clay. Bangu's arms, head, belly, and feet became China's 5 sacred mountains, sites of religious ceremony connected to one of the 5 elements and the 5 cardinal points. Mount Taivas, Taiwas, believed to have been formed from Pangu's head because because of its location in the east where the sun rises. So, in brief, the theme here is the creation of the universe from chaos. Source is historical records of the three sovereign divinities and the five gods from Shu Zhang, 3rd century CE. The master who embraces simplicity. Inner chapters Ge Hong, 4th century CE. The setting is the beginning of time. Key figure Pangu, the first living being, creator of the earth, a semi-divine human portrayed with animal qualities. And we also have Pangu's body became the 5 sacred mountains, each corresponded to one of the 5 Chinese cardinal points, north, east, south, west, and center. So, at the top, which is left arm or Mount Hang or Shaanxi province, permanent mountain, element water. So I would say that's to the north because it's up, pointing up. Then we have right arm, which is pointing down. I would say that's the south. Right arm, Mount Hang, Hunan province. But all of them are called Hang. Okay. And it is balancing mountain. And the element is fire. So it's opposite to water. To the left, which is to the west, I would say, our feet, which is Mount Hua, a Shanxi province as well, splendid mountain, and the element is metal. Interesting. And we have to the right, which I would assume is east, is head. Again, where the sun starts. So yes, I would believe that to be east. Mount Tai, Shandong province, tranquil mountain. Element is wood. And at the center we have the belly. Mount Song, Henan province, lofty mountain. The element is earth. And I believe that is it for the Chinese. We do have a small sub-segment here for yin and yang. The maintenance of the correct balance of the universe is a key theme of Taoist thinking. This is expressed through the concept of yin and yang, a phrase generally familiar in the Western world as representing the dual of opposing characteristics of one entity. The words yin and yang translate as the dark side and sunny side of a hill respectively. More broadly though, they stand for the dual features that make up the cosmos, such as woman and man, death and birth, and heaven and earth. Although these forces might appear to be opposites, they are in fact complementary. Neither yin nor yang is regarded as being superior or able to exist without the other. According to the I Ching, or first Ching, the ancient Chinese book of divinations, natural catastrophes such as famine and flood are caused by a loss of equilibrium between yin and yang. Okay, so gladly I was wrong. The next chapter is still about China. Enemy, here we go. The 10 suns all rose at once, scorching the sheaves of grain. Ye shoots the sun. Originally, there were 10 suns. Shihe, a solar deity, has given birth to them by her husband, Di Ju, a god of agriculture. The spirits of the suns were three-legged crows. Every day she harnessed one of the divine sun birds to her carriage. Harnessed? Yes. And traveled around the world, bringing light and heat to its people. One day disaster struck when all 10 sunbirds flew into the sky all at once. This caused the temperature on Earth to rise to dangerous levels, scorching the lands and preventing plants from growing. The people were too hot to breathe and came close to starvation. To make matters worse, terrible monsters emerged and roamed the land. They included a man-eating boa constrictor, a giant bird, and a huge wild boar with sharp tusks. Shihe and Dijun could not persuade the suns to depart the heavens. That's quite a situation. Yao seized the day. At this time, Yao, the ruler of China, urged Dijun to send help, which arrived in the form of Ye, the archer. Ye came down to earth carrying the red bow and white arrows that Dijun had given to him. Ye hunted down the deadly beasts and saved humanity from their attacks. He then turned to the problem of the 10 suns. Drawing his bow, Ye shot an arrow at one of the suns. The sun exploded, and its three-legged crow spirit fell to earth. One by one, Ye shot down the suns until just one remained. Yao told Yi to spare this last sun, as the people still needed the heat and light. For this action, which saved humanity and restored order to the world, Yao was given the title of Son of Heaven. He is revered in Chinese legends as a wise and judicious sovereign. Anyway, me with my siblings trying to read that word. My gosh. Tragic existence. Yi had arrived on Earth with his wife Chang'e and apprentice Fang Meng. As a reward from shooting the sunbirds, the Chinese goddess Shiwan Mu gave Yi an elixir of immortality, but it proved to be his undoing. Yi, who was immortal, did not want to imbibe the elixir because he could not bear to be separated from his wife. One day, Fang Meng, who was jealous of his master's skill and fame, broke into Yin's house while the archer was out hunting. Fang Meng demanded the elixir from Chang'e. Rather than give it to him, she drank it herself. Now immortal, she flew to the nearest celestial body, the moon, so she could remain close to her husband. When Yi found that his wife was gone, he set up an altar to her and laid out her favorite foods as an offering to her. He did this every year to mark the day she had left. This is a very frequent tradition for on the day when people, family people for deceased. A tradition for deceased, okay? Brain is not braining, but yes, so on the day that the family member or someone precious to the person died, they are putting a table with favorite foods of that person and some specific foods as well. I know that because I watch a lot of Japanese, Korean, and Chinese dramas and movies and anime. And some names are familiar, it's just that they're written in a way that I can't quite catch up on the first go. Anyway, Ye's life came to an end when treacherous Feng Meng beat him to death with a branch from a peach tree so that he himself could be the greatest archer on earth. After his death, Ye was worshipped as Zongbu or Zhongbu, a god who prevents disaster. His wife is now venerated as the spirit of the moon. The Japanese also have a legend about the princess on the moon. Actually, there's a Ghibli movie, or as Japanese would say, Jiburi movie. It's the legend of Princess Kaguya. It's very cute. I really like it. It's a different kind of style to Studio Ghibli. But anyway, so what have we got here? Setting ancient China, of course. Key figures is Shihe, a solar deity, Di Jun, Shihe's husband, god of the eastern sky and agriculture. Yao, a legendary Chinese emperor, circa 24th century BCE, who served as a model of wisdom and virtue. Yi, a skilled bowman, Shi Wan Gmu, a Chinese goddess, and Chang'e, Yi's wife. Okay, and we have a separate segment here towards the Mid-Autumn Festival. On the 15th day of the 8th lunar month, when the moon is full, the Mid-Autumn Festival is celebrated in China and Vietnam, and by people of Chinese and Vietnamese origin worldwide. The event, which dates back to the around 1600s BCE, is traditionally a thanksgiving for the annual rice and wheat harvest, marked by social gatherings and offerings for a bountiful year to come. A central feature of the festival is the veneration of the moon goddess Chang'e, one of many Chinese deities who are still revered. Anyway, gathering at night with friends and family, people burn incense, pray, and offer food to the lunar deity, just as Yi did when Chang'e had departed the earth. The best known of the foods is mooncake, a circular pastry commonly filled with a sweet bean paste. The round shape of the cakes is symbolic to togetherness and unity. As well as being offered to the moon goddess, these cakes are often given to friends and family at this time, usually in elaborate, beautiful packaging. Yes, very nice. I have tried a few mooncakes in my days. I would say that my favorite was, I think that traditional one has the bean paste. Sometimes it also has egg. I've tried one that had like sweet egg yolk. I never know how to pronounce that word. Not that I know in particular how to pronounce any word in English well, right? Some days are better than others. But yolk, like seriously. Anyway, egg yolk in the middle of the bean paste. I can say I enjoy that very much, but I don't really like the eggy desserts. Like everything that tastes too much like egg really is not for me, because seriously. But I did try one that had some matcha. Obviously those are, like already not too traditional. But the matcha one was great. I also tried one with ube, also was great. Anyway, but I would recommend trying it if you haven't. Okay, now let's continue to the other chapter, and it is still about ancient China and India. I'll roam the corners of the oceans and go to the edge of the sky. The Adventures of the Monkey King. The classical Chinese story of Sun Wukong begins with the union of heaven and earth. From this union, a stone egg was formed which emerged from the mountain of flowers and fruit. From the egg, a monkey was born named Sun Wukong. At first, Sun Wukong played with the other animals who lived on the mountain. Eventually, he grew in ambition and, declaring himself the Monkey King, became a demon. I recently watched a movie with a similar story like that. The monkey was born and he really wanted to be a god, and he did absolutely everything in his power to become a god, and eventually he was considered a demon. It's a cute animation. I would recommend it. And I think it is called Monkey King. Anywho, with his new status, Sun Wukong became an immensely powerful and skilled fighter, able to transform into 72 different animals and objects and leap halfway around the world in a single jump. He armed himself with a gold banded staff, which could magically change size according to his needs. Absolutely, that story is exactly like that. Or that movie, animation movie. Immortal and imprisoned. Despite his status as the Monkey King, when it came time for his son Wukong to die, he was dragged to the underworld. Instead of submitting to his fate, however, he erased his name from the register of life and death, making himself immortal. Hearing the Sun Wukong's activities, the Jade Emperor, ruler of heaven, summoned him and gave him a position at court, hoping it would end his exploits. Sun Wukong expected a senior office, but was given a lowly post of a superintendent of stables. When he realized how unimportant his position was, he flew into a rage. He declared himself the great sage and equal to the Jade Emperor. At first, the Jade Emperor tried to placate Sun Wukong by making him the guardian of the heavenly peach orchard. The intent ended, however, when Sun Wukong was not invited to a banquet with the other deities. He rebelled against the Jade Emperor, stole and ate the peaches of immortality from the garden, and defeated all the forces the emperor has sent to kill him. With all other hopes lost, the Jade Emperor appealed to the Buddha to control Sun Wukong. The Buddha seized him in his hand, which he transformed into an enchanted mountain. The rebellious Monkey King was now trapped indefinitely. Dutiful disciples. Several centuries later, a Chinese monk called Xuanzang made a pilgrimage west to India to gather more complete version of Buddhist texts where there were in China. Huanzhang was helped by Guan Yin, a goddess of mercy, who arranged for several disciples to protect him in his journey in order to atone for their past misdeeds. The first was Sun Wukong, who was freed from his mountain prison. To keep him under control, Guan Yin placed a hand around his head that would tighten if Xuanzang chanted a particular mantra. The next disciple was Shu Bajie, a former immortal banished from heaven for drunkenness and reborn on earth as a pig monster. Lastly was Sha Wujing, also a former immortal, existed from heaven for exiled from heaven for smashing a crystal goblet. He was now a grotesque river monster. My gosh, can people like, I don't know, like he just broke a goblet. I don't know if he broke it on purpose. Maybe he, like, in rebellious act, just smashed it to the ground. But if it was accidentally, anyway, Xuanzang's 17th-year ordeal was beset with hazards engineered by the Buddha in order to cultivate his spiritual growth. Finally, Xuanzang returned the sacred writings to China and was given Buddhahood. Buddhahood? Okay. Sun Wukong had proved a loyal and effective bodyguard, protecting Xuanzang from many demons. As the reward, Sun Wukong was also elevated to the status of Buddha, Awakened One, and was subsequently awarded the title of Victorious Fighting Buddha. So there we have the Monkey King who, after all his years of being stuck inside the mountain, was released, helped this monk to gather sacred texts, and was named a Buddha or given a status of Buddha. So I really like that in terms of, I might be very wrong here, but Buddha is not a single entity, right? It's a state of enlightenment, like the highest state of enlightenment, right? So anyone can turn into Buddha, right? And I really enjoy that. I feel like from all the religions, the one, if I had to choose one, Buddhism would be the one that I would, gladly follow. Anyway, and we have the small semi-chapter here dedicated specifically to Xuanzang. Oh my gosh. Anyway, the figure of Xuanzang in literature was based on a historical figure. Born in 602 CE in Luoyang, central China, he was ordained as a novice monk at 13 and as a full monk 7 years later. Buddhism had arrived in China from India in the 3rd century BCE. Xuanzang's concern was that the texts being used to study Buddhism were often incomplete and inaccurate. He decided to journey to India himself to study and collect the text. Despite the imperial ban on foreign travel at the time, Xuanzang set out in 629 CE, returning 17 years later with hundreds of Buddhist texts in Sanskrit. At the request of Emperor Taizong of the Tang dynasty, Xuanzang also compiled an account of his journey entitled Great Tang Records on the Western regions. This work would go on to inspire Wu Chang'en's journey to the West, now viewed as one of the most influential Chinese novels of all time. Xuanzang studied for the rest of his life in Chang'an, now Xi'an, where Indian Buddhist texts were translated into Chinese. Okay, and now we are off to the Japanese territory, I believe. Yes, Izanagi and Izanami. I remember those names, so there we go. Having finished making the lands, they went on to make its spirits, Izanagi and Izanami. The first heavenly deities gave Izanagi, he who beckoned, and Izanami, she who beckoned, the task of making Japan, known as Kuniyumi, creation of the land. From their union, they were to produce Oyashima, comprising the 8 largest Japanese islands and also 6 smaller islands. To do this, the couple made an earthly home. From the bridge between heaven and earth, Izanagi used a jeweled spear to steer up the sea below. As he withdrew the spear, clumps of salt fell from it to form an isle where Izanagi and Izanami were married. During the ceremony, Izanami spoke first, admiring her husband. What a fine young man. Okay, and we have the 8 islands of ancient Japan, which I believe doesn't include Hokkaido. Okay, so we have the major island Yamato, and then we have Tsukushi, Iyo, Tsushima, Iki, Oki, Sado, and Awaji. Yamato is a famous one. Birth and death. Izanami soon gave birth to 2 islands, but they were misshapen. The couple asked the spirits why and were told that it was because Izanami had spoken first at their wedding. Okay. Repeating the ceremony, they took care that Izanagi was the first to speak. So Izanagi is the man, Izanami is the woman. Right. Of course, because obviously we could not make it without patriarchal references in any mythologies. Okay. The next births were the beautiful islands of Japan. Izanagi and Izanami then created many spirits to represent Japan's natural features. Well until Izanami gave birth to Kaguchushi, flickering flame elder, a rare spirit who burned her so severely during labor that she died. Izanagi took his sword and beheaded Kagutsushi, whose corpse produced 8 warrior gods and 8 mountain gods. Izanagi then journeyed to the underworld to retrieve Izanami. Standing outside the hall where she was staying, he asked her to come back to earth. Izanami replied that she had to seek permission to leave because she had eaten food cooked at the heart of the underworld as an act to bound her there. This is exactly the same as the story of Persephone. Guys, come on. Can we not retell the same story again and again? Just use a little bit of imagination. I'm just kidding. But yes, it's exactly the same. I mean, exactly the same to the point of like she ate the food so she had to stay there. When Izanagi grew impatient for a response, he looked into the hole. There he beheaded Izanami's decayed body. What? Oh, beheld, not beheaded. There he beheld Izanami's decayed body, crawling with maggots. Angered that Izanagi should see her like this, Izanami sent the hag Yomotsu Shikume, ugly woman of the underworld, to chase him away, along with 8 thunder spirits that had emerged from her corpse and 1,500 warriors. Izanagi fled back to earth and rolled a boulder across the portal of the underworld. Izanami and Izanagi stood on either side of the boulder, and he declared they were divorced. Utterly bereft, Izanami swore to strangle 1,000 people every day, But Izanagi vowed to counter this with 1,500 births. But he's alone. Anyway, feeling unclean after his contact with the dead, Izanagi disrobed and bathed. He discarded clothing his discarded clothing became 12 spirits, and when he washed his body, he created 14 more. The last 3 were most mighty gods from his right eye. But when he disrobed, did he took his eyes out? Is that the type of disrobing that we are talking about? Anyway, from his right eye came Tsukuyumi, spirit of the moon. From his left eye sprang Amaterasu, spirit of the sun. From his nose came Susano. Oh my gosh. Not all the words from Naruto. Came Susano, who ruled the sea and the storms. The conflict between Amaterasu, also a goddess of fertility, and Susano, whose forces destroyed crops, would soon rival the epic enmity between Izanagi and Izanami. Okay, so we have the source is Kojiki Records of Ancient Matters. It is from 712 CE. The setting is Japan in the Age of Spirits. And key figures are Izanagi, creator god, Izanami, Izanagi's younger sister and wife, but who created them? Right? That's always the case with the gods. Like, if these gods were created by someone, then who created them? Anyway, Kagutsuchi, a fire spirit, Yomotsu Shikume, a hideous hag, Tsukuyomi, god of the moon and light, Amaterasu, goddess of the sun and the universe, and Susano, god of the sea and storms. And we have a small chapter here dedicated to Shintoism, which is a Japanese religion. Japan's main religion, Shinto, way of the gods, draws on the nation's indigenous beliefs. Its practices were first recorded in two early 8th century texts, the Kojiki, Records of Ancient Matters, and Nihon Shoki, Chronicles of Japan, both of which include the creation myth of Izanagi and Izanami. With no particular founder and no strict dogma, Shintoism encompasses many different traditions and influences. Its most important feature is the worship of kami, spirits, which are often forces of nature that reside in features and the landscape, such as rocks and rivers. Kami also include venerated ancestors who perform the role of guardians of their descendants. Kami are revered through prayer and ritual, which can take place at small household altars called kamidana, god shelves, where the family kami are enshrined and offerings are laid. There are also larger public shrines that house national kami and the sacred objects associated with them. I really like that, because like a simple rock can have a spirit. Again, I am very much inclined to say that if I had to choose a religion, Shintoism would definitely be at the top as well, because I really enjoy this idea that everything is precious and everything is, I don't know, spiritual. I don't know if I can use that word, but I don't know, that everything should be appreciated, basically, the way that Japanese and also other cultures, but the way that they thank for the food, itadakimasu, every time they eat something, they, I mean, it's not only them, I do know of other cultures that do the same, not necessarily even in Asia, but what I want to say that this type of approach is, anyway, it's just precious in comparison to the high, all high and mighty, single God, all righteous, all pure, or whatever he wants to be. That really doesn't sit well with me, especially because of human nature and other things. Not necessarily just human nature, but don't let me rumble. Okay, and we have a much bigger chapter dedicated and now to Susano and Amaterasu. All manner of calamities arouse everywhere. It's interesting that both Susano and Amaterasu are things related to the Uchiha clan in Naruto. Seriously, I would like my brain to remember other things that I studied instead of remembering like this kind of details from anime that I watched, But I exactly know like Amaterasu is the non-stopping black fire attack that Uchiha, a higher level Uchihas have, and Susano is the shield, which is another type of fighting, I guess, protecting technique. Anyway, don't let me geek out on that. Amaterasu, goddess of the sun, and her younger brother Susano, god of the sea, quarreled constantly, and Susano often played tricks on his sister. Tired of his mischief, their father Izanagi ordered Susano to go into exile in the underworld. Before he left, however, Susano journeyed to the heavens in order to see his sister. Believing he had come to steal her realm, Amaterasu was alarmed at her brother's arrival. She parted her hair and strung it with precious pendants, which she also hung from her arms. She then armed herself with a bow and 1,500 arrows, and when Susano arrived, she stamped onto the ground and demanded to know the reason of his visit. Saying that he had only come to say farewell, Susano suggested that they give each other a personal possession and use them to produce spirit offspring as a sign of good faith. What? Okay. To show that his intentions were good, Susano handed Amaterasu his sword. She broke it in 3 and rinsed the pieces in the well of the heavens. She then put them in her mouth, chewed them, and spat them out, producing 3 female sea spirits. Susano then asked Amaterasu for her pendants. He bit them into small pieces and spat them out, creating 5 male spirits. Interesting type of creation. Sibling conflict. After this exchange, relations between Amaterasu and Susano were initially peaceful. However, Susano quickly resumed his former bad behavior. He declared that the children born from his sword were weak-limbed women. Excuse me. And rank among through his sister's heavenly realm and ran amok through his sister heavenly realm in a destructive rampage. He devastated her rice paddies and threw excrement about the hall where she had celebrated the harvest feast. Susano then went to the hall where Amaterasu and other spirits were weaving cloth. He broke a hole through its ceiling and dropped a sacred colt that he had skinned into their midst, causing chaos. What is a colt? The shock made one of the spirits inside slam her weaving shuttle into herself, causing a fatal injury. Amaterasu was so appalled and frightened she hid in the cave deep in the center of the earth. Oh, I know this story. Called Amano Iwato, Heaven's Boulder Cavern, and refused to leave. This plunged the world into darkness, of course, because she's the sun. The spirits gathered together outside the cavern and to try to persuade Amaterasu to come out of hiding. Omoikane, the god of wisdom and advisor of the spirits in heaven, devised a cunning plan. He gathered hard stone from the upper reaches of the Milky Way and iron from the mountains of heaven. Using these materials, he then instructed other spirits to fashion small curved pendants, known as Yasakani no Magatama, and an 8-sided mirror called the Yata no Kagami. Uprooting a tree, Omoikane planted it outside the entrance of the cavern. He struck the upper branches with the pendants and the lower branches with prayer strips made of white mulberry paper and blue hemp. In the middle of the tree he hung the 8-sided mirror. A dawn goddess, Ameno Zume, then overturned the bucket near the entrance of the cavern and began to dance on it. As she danced, she bared her breasts and pulled her girdle down past her waist. The other spirits laughed uproariously. Hearing the commotion, Amaterasu curiously peered out of the cavern. As she emerged, she caught sight of her reflection in the mirror. As she was momentarily transfixed, Ameno Taji Karao, a strong god hiding close by, pulled her out into the open. A sacred robe was flung over the cavern's entrance to stop her going back into the cave, and other spirits told Amaterasu she would no longer withhold her radiance. She agreed never to hide herself again, and once more the world was bathed in her light. Okay, excuse me, but like, why didn't you go? First of all, Susano should be punished for his misdeeds because it was his fault. Okay? Like, she was not just, oh my gosh, okay, I give up, like, F this, and, you know, I'm leaving, like, F this, and I'm out. No, like, he was constantly messing with her. And, like, if she is so precious, you know, the sun itself, just, honestly. Anyway, patriarchy at its best. Death and rebirth. With Amaterasu out of hiding, the gods had to decide what to do with Susano, who, in acting erratically, selfishly, and destructively, had committed a serious breach of traditional Japanese moral values. First, in punishment for his actions, he had his fingernails, toenails, and facial hair torn out. He was then to be exiled from heaven to earth. When the spirits also imposed a fine of 1,000 tables laden with food, Susano asked the female food spirits, Ogetsu Hime, for help in finding food. She agreed, but pulled the food from her nose, mouth, and backside. Susano found this so offensive that he slew her, but Ogetsu Hime's corpse flourished again, mirroring the harvest cycle of death and rebirth. I mean, if she is the food god, then right? Food should come out of her, any orifice. I agree. Silkworms emerged from her head. Rice came from her eyes, mild with her ears. Millet from her ears. Red beans from her nose. Plain brick. Anyway, so we have red beans from her nose, barley from her reproductive organs, and soybeans from her rear. Okay? These grains and beans were transformed into seeds, and Susano sowed and harvested them to pay his fine. After being banished from heaven, Susano went to Mount Torikami on the Spirit River. As he walked through the countryside, he saw a chopstick floating down the river, and, following the direction from which it had come, he found an elderly couple with a beautiful daughter. All three were weeping. The old man, Ashinazuchi, said that the couple had once had 8 daughters, but each year one had been devoured by a dragon called Yamata no Orochi. How now only their youngest daughter, Kushinada Hime, was left. Killing the dragon. Susano was told that the dragon had 8 heads and 8 tails, and was so huge that it spanned 8 valleys and 8 peaks. He agreed to kill the dragon in return for Kushinada Hime's hand in marriage. Susano ordered the elderly couple to make a batch of extra strong sake and to make a fence with 8 doors. At each one they were to place a cask of sake. When the dragon arrived, it drank from each of the casks. The sake was so strong that the beast quickly fell asleep. Susano then used his sword to hack it into pieces. Inside the corpse he found a mighty blade that came to be called Kusanagi no Tsurugi, which he later gave to Amaterasu to atone for his bad behavior. With the dragon slain, Susano and Kushinada Hime married and had 6 generations of offsprings. My gosh, 6 generations. What does that mean? Okay, I'm gonna think about it because anyway, brain is not braining today. Okay, I do believe that that is it for both Chinese and Japanese. We just have a small 2 sections dedicated to the Imperial regalia of Japan and for kami, the spirits, in Shinto and Japanese emperors. So, the Imperial regalia of Japan, also known as the 3 sacred treasures, were passed from Amaterasu's grandson to the emperor and were used as the part of the enthronement ceremony. They represent wisdom, benevolence, and valor. Yata no Kagami, 8-hand mirror, used by the gods to lure Ameno Uzume no Mikoto from her cave. But wasn't that for Amaterasu? Anyway, Ya Sakani no Magatama, pendant, decorated with the tree around which Ameno danced. Uzume danced. Okay, and Kazanagi no Tsurugi, grass cutting sword, given to Amaterasu by Susano. Okay, so that was the sword that he found when he killed the dragon. Although, and this is a bit out of, like, the timeline is not timelining much, because wasn't the scene about him giving her the sword before, like, he went into making trouble again and then being punished again and she ran away and blah blah blah. and the whole shebang with the mirrors and the cave and everything came into existence. I don't know. Anyway, but we have the kami and the Japanese emperors. After her dispute with Susano was resolved, Amaterasu turned to bringing order to the earth. Her two sons were unable to accomplish this task, but eventually her grandson, Ninigi, was sent down. Amaterasu gave him three powerful treasures: the pendants, the mirror, and the sword that Susano had given her. Also, he'd given her two swords, maybe. Ninigi brought order to Japan and married Konohana Sakuyahime. Konohana Sakuyahime, the granddaughter of the original creators Izanagi and Izanami. Ninigi's great-grandson was Jimmu, the legendary first emperor of Japan, who was said to have reigned in 660 and 585 BCE. Jimmu's chief wife was a descendant of Susano and Kushinada Hime. As such, the emperors were regarded as being the direct descendants of many of the most important kami, spirits worshipped in the Shinto religion. The emperor's traditional title is Tenno, heavenly sovereign. In 1945, however, as part of Japan's surrender after World War II, Emperor Hirohito renounced his divine status. And we have him, and he lived from born in 1901, and he lived until 1989. Anyway, and that concludes this reading of Chinese and Japanese. Again, I feel like this was very, very short, and comparing it to Greek and other mythologies is just sad. But it is what it is. I actually went into reading about Japanese mythology a while ago because I was curious. Normally, from where I am and where I live, we don't really talk much, or even like historically, not much is described about Japan prior to the wars, right? The wars with Korea, China, the world wars, etc. So again, my journey with my fascination with Asian culture actually began with me watching anime and then going into Japanese movies and then going into Japanese doramas and then stepping into Korea, watching Korean movies, Korean dramas, listening to K-pop, and so forth. I actually watched quite a few Chinese movies prior to this because my mom really used to like Chinese and Indian cinemas, so I used to watch Chinese movies when I was younger. And again, I was born in Ukraine, and through the years where the separation from the Soviet Union was recent, again, that there's history, right, that Soviet Union is a friend and China are friends and so forth, and then obviously these movies came into to us more easily, I guess, because of the friendship. I don't know. That's my explanation about that, because when I moved to Portugal, I remember people never, ever in their life watching a Japanese or Chinese or Indian movie or ever seeing them on television or stuff like that. And I did watch Chinese movies on just normal television at home because, again, it was normal. Anyway, all that to say that I enjoyed this reading very much. Even though it was short and the stories are very much, I don't know, it is what it is, right? I would really like to explore it much more. Again, I would like to buy a specific book for each mythologies and read through them, but I am surprised and not surprised to see that there are even repetitions in mythology, even towards this side of the world, right? So the repetition is not just in that group where we have Egypt, Mesopotamia, Greece, Roman. Roman is a copy paste, so I'm not even gonna consider them. But yes, Greece, Norse mythology and all of that. So many similarity. India as well, and again then following to the east, right? The extreme east, which is Japan, right? Yeah, I'm surprised and not surprised, I guess, that we had some similarities there, but that's the joy of this reading, I guess. Anyway, I'll stop rambling here, and yeah, I hope that you enjoyed this reading, and I hope I see you next time. Bye!